Hello, church. So here is our devotional for Wednesday, May 27th. Yes, my birthday and beginning of my 52nd year of life. Funny conversation with my mom when they called to wish me happy birthday. My mom was like, I remember being 52. Great. Oh, yeah. I still remember being in elementary school. All right, I'm going to hear about that one from my mother. So today we continue in Ecclesiastes. We did three different sections for Ecclesiastes 3, and today come into Ecclesiastes 4. We're going to be doing the first 8 verses. And we're following the break that Towner is using in the NIB, which is the New Interpreter's Bible. Peterson does a slightly different break, but he has a fun title in there, so we'll go ahead and include that and get you updated in everything. I'm also going to be condensing some of the reading that I started yesterday as Towner's laying out these kind of 4 aspects that are being uplifted for his time of reflection. So from 4 verse 1. Again, I saw all the oppressions that are practiced under the sun. Look, the tears of the oppressed with no one to comfort them. On the side of their oppressors, there was power with no one to comfort them. And I thought the dead who have already died more fortunate than the living who are still alive. But better than both is the one who has not yet been and has not seen the evil deeds that are done under the sun. And that we got into a little bit yesterday in some of Towner's reflection. Then I saw that all toil and all skill and work come from one person's envy of another. This also is vanity and a chasing after wind. Fools fold their hands and consume their own flesh. Better is a handful with quiet than 2 handfuls with toil and a chasing after wind. Again, I saw vanity under the sun, the case of solitary individuals without sons or brothers, yet there is no end to all their toil, and their eyes are never satisfied with riches. For whom am I toiling, they ask, and depriving myself of pleasure? This also is vanity and an unhappy business. So yesterday, the piece that we uplifted, and let me give you the intro again. This interesting passage provokes reflection on 4 of the teacher's themes that continue to resonate in our lives: the hatefulness of life, our solidarity with the animals in death, the ethics of envy, the human need for cause. Those last 2 we're going to focus on. The solidarity with animals is largely just talking about us being organic creatures, if you will, and the reality of death for all living things. So this picks up with the ethics of envy. Perhaps the teacher intended to be cynical in attributing all effort and accomplishment to envy in verse 4. Then again, perhaps he had grabbed human nature by the same lapel that Adam Smith and other capitalists seized it by in later times. Competition, or in this case envy, drives the engine of commerce. One wonders, however, how this insight fits with the conviction expressed in 3:11 that everything is predetermined. Actually, it is remarkable that so many contradictory thoughts about the same subject can have the ring of truth. On the one hand, it strikes the reader as true that we live in a web of fixed orders. From our poem section of 3:1-8, there is a time for every matter under heaven. And that, at the same time, we can make choices that are good and bad. It strikes one as true that people are urged on to toil and skill because they fear death and because they envy their neighbors. By nature, truth is multifaceted. And then I didn't quite mark what I wanted to do here. And then for 4, the human need for a cause. The delightful story in 4 verses 7 to 8 tells about the lonely, childless person who, like Ebenezer Scrooge, after Marley's ghost had finished with him, asked, "Why am I joylessly struggling to acquire goods and property that I have nowhere to put in the end?" His case is almost worse than that of the person who has to leave it all to some fool from 2:19. None of us can prove that the deferred gratification that we practice now will have some payoff in the years ahead or in the world to come. To be set alongside Kohelet's insight, however, is the equally important biblical realization that human beings require a cause, something bigger than themselves, in order to live happily and effectively. Both creation accounts in Genesis establish this as a reality. So the days of the week account, as well as Adam and Eve and naming all the creatures. We'll fast forward a little bit to get to his concluding paragraph. Put the insight of Genesis alongside that of the teacher, Kohelet, and you have valid and useful doctrine. To put everything off to some future time while spending the present enslaved to money making is foolish. Just say no to that. On the other hand, it is also true that we want to feel that our lives contribute to a larger good. Sometimes we use the phrase legacy as a part of that. How we are being a part of something greater and recognizing ourselves as a part of that. So for Peterson, and he's going to split up the verses, and then we'll give you the title right before 7 and 8. Next, I turn my attention to all the outrageous violence that takes place on this planet. The tears of the victims, no one to comfort them. The iron grip of oppressors, no one to rescue the victims from them. That's an interesting setting compared to the NRSV. So I congratulated the dead who are already dead instead of the living who are still alive. But luckier than the dead or the living is the person who has never even been, who has never seen the bad business that takes place on this earth. Then I observed all the work and ambition motivated by envy. What a waste, smoke, and spitting into the wind. The fool sits back and takes it easy. His sloth is slow suicide. One handful of peaceful repose is better than 2 fistfuls of worried work, more spitting into the wind. His phrase for the next section: why am I working like a dog? I turned my head and saw yet another wisp of smoke on its way to nothingness. A solitary person, completely alone, no children, no family, no friends, yet working obsessively late into the night, compulsively greedy for more and more, never bothering to ask, why am I working like a dog, never having any fun, and who cares? More smoke, a bad business. The Ebenezer Scrooge reference from Charles Dickens was a very apt portion for that. So thank you to Towner for that segment. All right, so that's it for today. We'll be back with you tomorrow as we continue in chapter 4, and we'll see you then.